Pleasant hello to you. For Telesur, I'm Regan Devines in Caracas, Venezuela, and this is from the South. First up, former president of Guatemala, Otto Perez Molina, arrived back in court this morning to hear the judge's decision on whether to press ahead with trying him for his alleged connection with the corruption scandal known as La Linea or The Line. Perez Molina resigned last week after weeks of public demonstrations on the streets. He was then banned from leaving the country and finally arrested last Friday. Former Vice President Roxana Baldetti is also in preventative prison until for the same charges. And we head now to Central America. Our correspondent there, Geraldo Torres in Tegucigalpa. Geraldo has been following this case. Geraldo, are you there? Can you hear me?
Hello, hi. Yeah,
hi. Geraldo, firstly, we'd like to ask, former President Otto Perez Molina is back in court right now. What do we expect to happen?
Well, the judge will have to decide if he is considered or not a suspect in the multi-million corruption case known as La Linea. If so, he will pass in a status of a provisional prison to a preventional prison. This could mean for him to be 2 or 3 months in the Matamoros jail, where he currently has been the last days, until all the investigation occurs. This would also mean that Otto Perez Molina will lose all of the benefits that he could have to answer to media without any permission. He will be a formal prisoner for the next 2 or 3 months while the investigation is presented. According to the International Anti-Impunity Commission and the General Prosecutor's Office, they have enough proof to prove that he is guilty, but his defense attorney has assured that if the judge decides that Otto Perez is to be called a suspect, they could prove that there is no direct connection that could prove that he was part of the Linea. That members of his government were part, that is a fact. But what his defense attorney assured is that there is no official document that could show that he received part of the money, more than that he could have known that the corruption case was taking place.
Some people in Guatemala have said that they hope this case opens the way to further investigations against the former president for human rights abuses in the 1980s and 1990s. Do you think that's a real possibility?
Well, there is a possibility. Otto Perez Molina was ahead of the military forces during the worst years of the military repression in the country. Many of the people that are part of the social movement and the political organizations believe that it's kind of unfair that he is being in trial for this corruption case instead of also being in trial by all the human rights abuses that he could have been part of or could have also been the head of. The intention is that once this trial is begun, other investigations while he is in prison can be taking place, so he can receive other accusations more related to human rights abuses and to abuses of power when he was the head of the military forces, and not only for the corruption scandal during the last years that he was the president of Guatemala.
Geraldo, thanks for chatting with us. We'll definitely touch base with you later on. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Continuing now with the results of the first round still in the air, Sandra Torres, the former First Lady, said she's convinced that she will be the next president of Guatemala. She passed her rival Manuel Valdez on Monday night, but they're still neck to neck. Authorities say with such tight results, it may take 5 days to confirm the final outcome. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro has ordered the closure of more border crossings with neighboring Colombia. The order will affect the state of Zulia. He said the measure was aimed at protecting the YU people from cross-border criminal activity. He also said it was to free Zulia state of Colombian paramilitaries.
I have decided, after precise study, to erect a new border closure at Paraguachón in Zulia state, to continue with the advancement of the liberation from Colombian crimes, paramilitaries, and contraband.
And Maduro has reiterated his call on his Colombian counterpart, Juan Manuel Santos, to meet for a dialogue aimed at resolving the border issue. The Venezuelan leader said he accepted the mediation of Brazil and Argentina in the crisis. Earlier, Santos had announced he was prepared to meet with Maduro. He said it would be a great opportunity to find new ways to collaborate in fighting crime at the border that divides Venezuela and Colombia.
We can transform this unfortunate situation in an opportunity to fight crime and stimulate the border region.
After the report, which was revealed on Sunday, contradicting the Mexican government's version about what happened to the 43 students who disappeared in Iguala, Guerrero almost a year ago, President Enrique Peña Nieto has committed to meet the parents of those missing. Peña Nieto has only met the relatives on one previous occasion. After the issuing of the report, though, the relatives asked the president to stand up and speak about what they claim is a crime state, 2 weeks before the anniversary of the disappearance. They announced a 43-hour fast ahead of a new march scheduled for September 26th. The family of a Colombian lawyer who was murdered 20 years ago has accused former President Alvaro Uribe of colluding with his killers. The Jesus Maria Valle Jaramillo was a lawyer devoted to defending poor peasants from his home region of Ituanga, Antioquia, and to reveal the atrocities committed by the paramilitary leader in collusion with civil and military authorities. He was murdered in 1998 when Uribe was the governor of Antioquia. According to a former paramilitary boss, Valle's death was ordered by the then secretary of the government of that department. This led the lawyer's nephew to believe that the then governor, Alvaro Uribe, must have known about the planned hit. We now move to Peru, where memories of the disasters caused by the weather phenomenon known as El Niño are a source of great distress as it approaches once more. And yet again, the government seems unprepared. Our correspondent, Rael Mora, explains.
The environmental phenomenon called El Niño has previously triggered heavy flooding in Peru, killing hundreds and displacing thousands more. El Niño causes increased rainfall over the Andes as Pacific seas temperatures fluctuate. With a new round of El Niño already starting, the government has been taking preventative actions, allocating over $1 billion.
The government is preparing for a complicated scenario. In July of this year, we declare under emergency 14 regions. Based on what happened in 82 and 83 and 97 and 98, and additionally intense rain scenarios, we have those 14 regions under risk.
However, the government is being questioned on whether or not the country is prepared to diminish the risks, particularly for those citizens living in dangerous areas in the north of the country, close to rivers or in unstable hills. Analysts claim preventative measures should have started earlier, such as relocating people, creating rain drainage systems, and establishing a coordinated plan with local authorities.
The infrastructure projects, or those for protecting infrastructure, should have started last year. That would have been ideal. Right now we are working against time, and if conditions are not right, or if sudden rains come earlier, it would be difficult to finish the project. That is part of the lessons we have learned and we have to live with in the years of 97 and 98.
The issue in agreement among the current government and its critics is that the country should have a permanent planning unit, preventative activities, and set budgets for reducing the risk of large disasters in the future. Rael Mora, Telesur, Peru.
The leader of the People's National Movement of Trinidad and Tobago, Keith Rowley, won Monday's general elections, taking 23 of 41 constituencies. Polls closed a bit later than expected due to rain, but soon after the results were announced, the ruling party, the People's Partnership, suffered a blow. They lost 11 seats in Parliament. They will now hold 18. The beleaguered former FIFA executive Jack Warner of the Independent Liberal Party did not win a single seat. Rowley will now form his government and present a budget proposal. In Argentina, the right-wing PRO party is facing accusations of corruption for carrying on alleged irregular contracts between the Buenos Aires city government and one of the party's nominees for Congress. From Buenos Aires, our correspondent Loriane Ponce with this report.
Several Buenos Aires city government offices were raided on Monday as a result of an ongoing investigation for corruption charges pressed against right-wing mayor and presidential hopeful Mauricio Macri and deputy mayor María Eugenia Vidal. The case involves a series of undeclared contracts between the city government and a company owned by sports journalist Fernando Niembro, who is running for parliament in Macri's party. After the case became public, local lawmakers started to demand explanations.
In this legislature, we received no answer about the reports we asked for, nor about the information or supporting documentation for these contracts.
Between 2012 and 2014, the city government signed more than 190 direct contracts for more than $2 million with a TV production company that had Niembro as one of its two partners. Such contracts were not listed in the city's official bulletin, and the company has not registered any employees. When asked about the situation, Macri and Vidal only answered that they trust Niembro.
We want Niembro to give the necessary answers, and that Macri and Vidal stop hiding what they hid by not publishing these contracts in the official bulletin. They should stop talking about Niembro as if they were only friends, saying that they trust him, because they are the maximum authorities in Buenos Aires. They are responsible for any illegal act that may have taken place.
Opposition legislators and members of government control agencies have pointed out that while the right-wing discourse highlights the values of transparency and the fight against corruption, they seem to be far from putting it in practice.
If we think that the one who got this contract is running for Congress in the Pro Party, and he is also a very close friend of Mauricio Macri, I will say this is really suspicious.
The case is now under judicial investigation, and it is involving several city government agencies, including the Ciudad Bank, in these irregular maneuvers. Laureano Ponce, Telesur, Buenos Aires.
A celebration is now underway at the Union of South American Nations in Ecuador to receive the Jamaican letter. It's one of the most important writings by the independence leader, Simón Bolívar. He composed it in 1815 in Kingston, where he was in exile. Former Colombian president and current UNASUR Secretary General Ernesto Samper opened the celebration for the 200th anniversary of the letter, as well as the discovery of the original English manuscript last year in Ecuador. He recalled that in this letter, Bolívar had called on the people of the Americas to prepare for a bloody reconquest by Spain. And our correspondent in Quito, Liz Scherfius, is attending the celebration at the UNASUR headquarters. Liz, it's good to see you. How are you doing?
Hello, Reagan. Yes, we are here at the UNASUR First Congress of History. As you can see behind me, there is the Jamaica letter, and historians from across the region are here celebrating this event.
Insight as to the importance of this letter.
Well, this letter is considered to be perhaps one of the most important documents of the region. It was written, as you said, 200 years ago by Simón Bolívar, who is accredited with many of the liberation movements of the region. It was a letter, as you said, that was written from Kingston, Jamaica, to the British merchant Henry Cullen on September 6, 1815. And it speaks of the importance for integration to fight against imperial powers in the region. It speaks of the in the region, and well, it really speaks of the importance for unification. It was an important document in 1850 as well as today. It is today in the Union of South American Nations headquarters, which is a regional organization really emphasizing regional integration, and is made up of 12 South American nations.
Liz, thank you so much for that insight. We'll try to catch up with you a bit later on in case there's anything more happening. Thanks so much, Liz. Moving on now, as the refugee crisis shows no signs of slowing down, the response from European governments has been diverse, to say the least. The EU has warned that the refugee situation could last for years, while the UN continues to plead for a global solution. Meanwhile, on the Greek island of Lesbos, authorities there have set up a new large registration facility in an effort to fast-track the registration of some 20,000 refugees who are stranded on the island. Deep divisions over how to cope with the flood of refugees from the Middle East, Africa and Asia have posed a threat to the European Union's global standing. However, the German Chancellor Angela Merkel has said that Europe must implement a joint system for dealing with asylum seekers.
This common position is based on the common asylum system. This joint European asylum system cannot just exist on paper, but must also exist in practice. I say that because it lays out minimum standards for accommodating refugees and the task of registering refugees. This is not something we demand beyond the existing agreements. This is something we demand to implement the existing rules we all agreed on together.
And yet, in another example of discrimination against refugees who are fleeing war and poverty, Denmark placed advertisements in several Lebanese newspapers on Monday. The notices warned would-be refugees about Denmark's new and tighter restrictions. Some of these restrictions include that persons need to speak Danish to receive permanent residency. The restrictions also caution that rejected applicants will promptly be returned to their home countries. And while war is to blame for the huge exodus of Syrians seeking safety in Europe, ironically, France has begun reconnaissance flights to prepare for its first airstrikes against territory held by the Islamic State in northern Syria. According to President François Hollande, IS militants have organized attacks against France, and bombing them goes hand in hand with tackling the refugees crisis. Now to the United States, where the family of Freddie Gray has reached a settlement with the city. Gray was the 25-year-old black man who died in April from a spinal injury he sustained while he was in police custody. Baltimore has tentatively reached a wrongful death settlement with the family for over $6 million. The agreement has yet to be submitted to the Baltimore Board of Estimates for a vote on Wednesday. Meanwhile, last week a judge ordered individual trials for the 6 police officers charged with Gray's death. In India, it was noted that last August there were 500 cases of dengue in New Delhi. More on this in the next segment.
Registered was 477, the highest number since 2010, when it reached 530 affected patients according to authorities. The doctors indicated that this year the symptoms of the disease were mild. The majority of the patients only presented fever, muscular and joint pains. It was informed also that the spreading of the virus was due to the seasonal variation because of the rainy season, a favorable condition for the reproduction of the mosquitoes that transmit the virus.
We head to Sudan now for sporting news, where despite many obstacles, a female coach hopes to build the country's first national women's football team. The 15 players who call themselves the Challenge because of the obstacles they've faced hone their skills on a dirt pitch next to an airport. They also have no equipment or funding. And added to that, they have to face suspicion from Sudan's Islamic authorities. Despite the coach's unsuccessful efforts to obtain funding, the team continues their training. In Havana, Cuba, hundreds of singers and musicians have come together to start rehearsals for an open-air mass in the capital's Jose Marti Revolution Square. The event will be headed by Pope Francis in September on his first visit to the island nation as the head of the Catholic Church. Francis will be the third pontiff to visit Cuba. He had presided over the Vatican mediation that led to the resumption of diplomatic ties between Washington and Havana after a rupture that had lasted more than half a century. The group of 100 musicians and 260 singers have 2 weeks to get ready for the event. And we're going back to our correspondent Liz Schaefers in Quito. We were previously disconnected with her. Liz, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can, Reagan. Hello.
Now, I wanted to ask, the original manuscript is there with you now in Quito. Where will it finally end up?
Well, this letter, as you can see behind me, the Jamaica letter, is currently under the protection of the Ministry of Culture here in Ecuador. It was before under the protection of the Central Bank of Ecuador. It is here today for this first Congress of UNASUR, this first History Congress of UNASUR and will be transported to the General Archive of the Nation this afternoon. But it is here for this Congress where there are historians from across the region who are specialists on this period and on Simon Bolivar and on South American liberation movements.
We understand that Ernesto Samper, the General Secretary of UNASUR, opened the conference. Who else is there and what were the comments like?
Yes, Reagan. Secretary General of UNASUR, Ernesto Samper, did open the Congress. He spoke of this document, its importance for the region, the past, present, and future. He said it was a visionary document of Bolivar to call for integration, for this unification of former Spanish colonies to combat imperial powers. Also here was the historian who actually discovered the Jamaica letter, who is Ecuadorian. His name is Almícar Varela, and he also spoke of the importance of this document in the past, present, and future, and how it was a visionary document in the way that Bolivar did call on these Spanish colonies to unite against domination, this oppression, really, which they suffered under Spain. Also here was Minister of Culture, Guillaume Long, who spoke of the legend that Manuela Sáenz actually brought the letter from Jamaica here to Quito. And he also spoke of the importance of this document in the current geopolitical context the region is living through organizations such as UNASUR. And on a side note, this document, the Jamaica letter, really was a visionary document predicting the integration of South America. I mean, we see organizations today like UNASUR, ALBA, CELAC, which really do represent this dream of integration, of unity of South America. Reagan.
I agree with you 100%. It's such an historic moment. Thanks so much, Liz. We'll talk to you another time.
Thank you, Reagan.
More on these and other stories on our website, telesurtv.net/English. We end our show with Dorothy Dandridge, who was the first African-American woman to be nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actress. Dandridge died in 1965 at the age of 42. From our news teams here in Quito, Ecuador, and in Caracas for Telesur English, I'm Regan Devines. We'll have another news brief for you this evening.
Must you let me down like this? Time's a wasting. What's it all about? I just want to know whether I'm in or out. What you say? Don't your future mean a thing? What you say? Just saying, okay, here I come from out of the blue to make you happy. And what do you do?
Now, honey, you pitched the boogie woogie. Shame on you.
Have I got you, baby? What you say? All I want to know is do you, don't you? Baby, will you, won't you?
Well, all right.